Let's not make him wait, all right? We've got Brady Quinn on the line.
Look at Clark Kent, man.
I'm telling you, man. Fox Sports, CBS Sports.
Good.
My goodness, Brady Quinn, thanks so much for
Hollywood.
the time.
I got to step my game up, man.
Yeah, no, you're looking good, B. Thank you guys for having me on. Thanks for having me join in.
Excited to have you on, man. I'll tell you a quick story. So Brady Quinn's first series in 2007 as a NFL quarterback, he came in, we were playing the 49ers, and we were on the goal line, right? And so I ran a slant. I was wide open for like literally 7 seconds. I was wide open. I'm screaming for the ball, and then by the time he gets the ball to me, like I kind of forgot that I was open, and I dropped his first touchdown. Could have been his first touchdown. We ended up kicking a field goal. So I owe you one. I dropped what should have been a touchdown.
Well, truth of it was actually an in cut. Getting to it because the first window wasn't there. That was contested, though. The Kellen Winslow, the next play, he dropped it. That hit him right in the numbers. He dropped that one. You didn't drop it. Kellen dropped his. Okay.
You see how we're brothers. You see. I took the onus of it though.
I'm telling you, Brady. And I was telling this story before you came on. One of the things I feel like you are one of Braylon Edwards' biggest supporters. Just seeing you on social media, just that camaraderie with a former teammate that is a lifelong friendship. I don't know. As a guy who sits on the sidelines and just talks about this stuff and never got a chance to play in college. Although Braylon, Brady, let me tell you, I never came out of the game in high school. Okay, I played offense, defense, and special teams. I was so good for Grosse Pointe South. They just didn't know what to do with me. No.
Coach just said, "Get back, just get back."
But just the friendship, the camaraderie, the support. I really appreciate that. I think it's wonderful.
No, it's awesome. I mean, look, Braylon and I hit it off right away. We played against each other during our time in college. I mean, hell, I almost went to Michigan. I was really looking heavily at Michigan. Ultimately, thought Notre Dame might be a better situation for me personally. But, even once I got to Cleveland, whether it was working out together, training together, hanging out together off the field, all that, he was just a great dude. Took me under his wing. We lived close to one another, so I used to drive over and see him every once in a while. So, yeah. That's right, Avon Lake. And then we even took some trips together. We made out to Vegas a couple times together.
Oh, man. He was the only guy my dog loved, too.
That's fantastic. Talking to Brady.
He was the only teammate that my dog loved.
That is fantastic. Why didn't your dog like anybody?
Louis didn't like anybody. Like Louis he only liked females. Like guys would come to the door and Louis he wouldn't bite anybody, but he barked. Big dog. Rest in peace. He passed a couple years ago. But Louis, man, I forgot about that. Let's dive into some college stuff, man. I'm excited.
Let me do this 30 seconds from now. Brady, sit tight. 30 seconds. Woodward Sports Network. Fun day today. Braylon Edwards. We got Stan Edwards in the house as well, and Brady Quinn.
You got Dad in the house, man. He can hear you.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
Papa Edwards, what's up?
Hey, Brady, hey, look at that good-looking guy. Are you sure I'm not your dad, too? Hey, Mass, this is what I'm talking about, buddy. This is the eye candy that I was telling you about, Mass, all right? So you know.
I can't.
All right.
That's the way to do it.
Take his microphone.
Brady, let me get right into the news of the day for you. I don't know. I almost fell off my chair when I heard that Cam Newton was cut in New England. Your reaction, and were there any chairs that you were about to fall off of?
Yeah, I was extremely surprised. I don't know that anyone saw this coming, and it was for a few reasons. Look, Mac Jones had a great preseason. I think he was quite ready to take over, especially considering what Mac has done in the NFL. However, that's not my decision. So if Josh McDaniels, who had a chance to go and play for a year, feels like Mac is ready and he's ready to give him the keys to the franchise, along with Bill Belichick, obviously, so be it. But I was very surprised they went with this direction, and especially the timing of it. They didn't have to make this decision right now, which actually leads me to think that Bill Belichick probably had the conversation with Cam Newton that they were going to let Mac Jones start and ask him if he wanted to be a backup. And I think knowing a little bit about Cam, having played against him and then worked with him through the media and broadcasting, I think he probably said, just go ahead and cut me. And let me go try to find an opportunity to go play. He doesn't strike me as the type that wants to sit behind someone, especially a rookie, and be that mentor, at least not right now in his career. I think he still feels like he's young and he's good enough to start in this league. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think he's wrong. I think he should call up his old head coach, Ron Rivera, with the Washington football team, and whether it's there, whether it's potentially Houston, a couple other places. I know you guys had kind of thrown out Miami. Maybe if Brian Flores feels that'd be an upgrade there. I'm still curious to see what Tua will be, especially with the piece he has around him. I don't know that we've seen him enough yet, but there's a number of places that I think he would be the starter at if he was able to go in there. And for the other opportunities that might be out there as a backup, that's for him to decide if he wants to go into that role right now and wait for a guy either to get hurt or play poorly.
See, this is how I know you're very seasoned and you're expert at what you do, because that's definitely where I was coming to next. I was going to ask you, what do you see next for Cam and what's his move? So since you took that, let's switch gears to college football. Do you know anything further about what this alliance that the Big 10, the Pac-12, and the ACC have brought together? Like, do you know any further, like, what that is? And is college football headed in the right direction with this alliance and then Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC in 2 or 3 years?
It's a loaded question, B.
It's a lot. My bad.
Let me just say this about the alliance. I don't really know what exactly it is outside of the ACC, Big 10, and Pac-12 coming together in unity to say that we want to stop and make very aware that we see what the SEC and really ESPN is doing to college football, and we want to pump the brakes, okay? But if you don't have anything in writing, here's the problem. As soon as they come out in unity talking about, scheduling, and they're in agreement with one another, and they don't need a contract, they just have these handshake agreements, and they look man to man, they look each other in the eye and shake hands, and that's all they need. Here's the problem. The next day, USC and LSU announce a non-conference game, like I think it's for 2024. And so I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I get the idea of the alliance. It makes complete sense, especially if you're saying to the SEC, well, look, you guys might view yourself as the best conference, and I think it'd be hard to argue that they're not. But if you view yourself as the best conference, well, guess what? Come time to determine the 4 best teams or an expanded playoff, it's going to be hard to compare your schedule to ours because we're not going to play in our non-conference games. That's where I thought they were going, where these 3 conferences were going to work together to play each other in non-conference and then work to basically have a seat at the table to determine expansion or determine what the playoff is going to look like. But when the next day USC and LSU announced they're playing, I guess, a neutral site non-conference game in 2024, I'm like, well, what good did the alliance do? What is this in the first? What is this thing if we don't have anything in writing right now? Because this kind of stuff can happen.
Talking to Brady Quinn, former teammate of mine and Notre Dame Irish guy, man. Let's talk about your Irish for a second. I was looking at their schedule, and on first glance, it doesn't look like they have a hard schedule at all. It looks like an easy schedule until you really do some homework on this schedule and you realize it's an intriguing one. It's one I'm looking here. You guys are Wisconsin, with Cincinnati, USC, and UNC. If you know your football, you know that UNC might play Clemson in the ACC championship. Cincinnati might be undefeated and beat Indiana, who I love their quarterback. I hope that Penix makes it back off his ACL. USC is a strong team in that Pac-12. They're a very sneaky team if you watch them at the end of last year. So it goes from an interesting schedule to I think could be a good one. Expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think they have 4 teams ranked in the top, 20 or whatever it is. So starting out the season, that's obviously makes it look pretty tough on the outside. I think they've got an interesting mix of teams too. Just when you go through some of that list of teams they're going to play, they've got to play a USC team that may have one of the best wide receivers in Drake London, with Keaton Slovis, who will be up there as one of the top quarterback prospects in next year's draft. I think they've gotten better up front in the trenches on both sides of the football, so that will be more challenging for them. UNC has Sam Howell coming back. They lost 2 of their best wide receivers in Daz Newsome and Duami Brown, but they've actually got Duami's little brother Caffrey coming, so maybe he can help out, carry that burden. Lost both running backs, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams. Those guys are gone, so he's got to shoulder a lot of it. But 2 very explosive offenses when you break it down. Look, Cincinnati, at least for the regular season last year, went undefeated. I think they could be in the conversation again for the college football playoff if they could run the table, but that's no easy out. And then I think you go through the rest of their schedule. Just opening up playing Florida State and Tallahassee, I mean, I don't know what to expect from that team. You know, best of my knowledge, whether it's Mackenzie Milton or Jordan Travis at quarterback, both can present some issues for you. They've got some speed and athleticism, and I think they started to find themselves in the second half of last year under Mike Norvell. So I think that'll be a tougher task than most people realize, and they're dealing with a ton of change at Notre Dame. You've got now Jack Cohn taking over, which you talk about that Wisconsin game. Yeah. He's a grad transfer from Wisconsin. That's going to make that matchup pretty interesting. You know, they've got 2 new offensive linemen. Technically, I guess you could say 3, but really, you know, Lugg and Coral that started and played last year. But they got a true freshman at left tackle. They've got Cade Madden, a grad transfer from Marshall, coming in, and that's really where they've hung their hat on. It's been their offensive line, their protection, their ability to maul people. So there's questions there. You know, they've got a new defensive coordinator. They stole Marcus Freeman from Cincinnati. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, it could be interesting for them this year, but everything I'm hearing is they're really excited about their chances of surprising people, even amidst all the change, because they're going to have more ability to throw it down the field. They love their wide receivers. They've got the best tight end in the country, in my opinion, of Michael Mayer, and they've already got a good ground attack. So offensively, I think they're going to be good. It's just about defense, if they can replace some of what they lost in the front 7.
Did you guys hear that insight?
That's that walking encyclopedia I was talking about.
That's why that guy graduated 3 years with a double major. That's my boy right there.
That's right. Talking to Brady Quinn. Absolutely. Brady, I want to stick with Notre Dame for a minute, because what Brian Kelly has done there has been, you know, fantastic. Just, you know, look at the last 4 years, 4 straight years, double-digit wins, 2 college football playoffs in the last 3 years. What has he been able to do at Notre Dame that Jim Harbaugh simply hasn't been able to do at Michigan?
I love this question, and I was hoping you guys would talk about this at some point, because I think Michigan's at a very similar point that Notre Dame was back after their 4-8 season. You know, I think Brian Kelly kind of took a look under the hood, and he looked at what was wrong. And what was wrong was, I don't know that they felt like they had an identity, and that was in a bunch of different ways. But I think nowadays, more than ever, it's important to understand, like, what are you pitching and what are you selling your recruits? And I think Notre Dame has figured out what that is. I mean, they can recruit any offensive lineman, any tight end. They should be able to recruit any running back with what those guys are running behind. And I think defensively, too, they've started to recruit more speed, more athleticism, more talent. And it's because their pitch is very unique as to the combination of academics and athletics, and then watch the development of what we've had going to the NFL level now. And so that pitch is very specific, and I think you know what to expect when they come out in the field week in and week out. When I look at that contrast to Michigan right now, if you were to tell me, like, what's their identity, I don't know that they would really be able to tell you that. Like, we could talk about them running, you know, the pro spread or like a spread option type offense now with Josh Gaddis, but what did they do well? I think it's hard to put your finger on that. I mean, last year they took a big step back running the football. I think they were like 11th of the 14 teams in the Big 10. Clearly, Joe Milton didn't work out in Michigan. We'll see if he works out at Tennessee. He just got named the starter. I had high hopes for him. I mean, the kid oozed with talent, but he just couldn't really put it together. So now you got Cade McNamara, and backing him up is J.J. McCarthy, who's you know, the highest recruited quarterback they've gotten, which is another part of it. I think the conversation is why you haven't gotten more J.J. McCarthys to be able to come there under the Harbaugh reign. But you know, I think what Notre Dame has done well is they addressed what their issues were directly, and then they've been able to recruit and develop to what their identity is. And that's being a physical football team up front on offense, basing everything off of a power running attack, being sound fundamental on that side. And then defensively, I think they've continued to be able to recruit, you know, guys that fit the scheme in which they're looking for and develop. I mean, Isaiah Foskey is going to be their edge rusher this year. It's to be highlighted. You know, he's a guy that, who knows where he'll end up going in the draft, but he's going to pop this year. You guys are going to see him talked about a lot coming next spring, too, for the draft. That's a guy that's continually got bigger, stronger, faster, and has developed into probably one of the better edge rushers now in college football.
If I didn't agree with you 100%, I'd jump through this TV and beat you up, man, talking about Notre Dame, talking about my Michigan team like that. But you're absolutely correct.
You said that the first day we were together, the identity. What's Michigan's identity?
First
Nobody
day we
be
got
able
on
to
air.
tell you.
That's what I say. It's the identity. You know, every year you're trying to figure it out, so I agree with you 100%.
Does that bother you?
No, it actually doesn't. It doesn't, because it bothers me that that's the case, but it doesn't bother me from the fact that I know it's the truth. You know, like, the truth doesn't bother me.
Because I remember when we used to play you guys, like, it bothers me because I think college football is better when Michigan's
Yes.
part of the national championship conversation.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Big 10, playing for the Big 10, or national championship, college football is better when Michigan's part of it.
It feels like it used to.
Well, no, and I think what bothers me about it is I remember playing Michigan where you're like, man, I know how I'm going to feel the day after that game. Like, it was a physical battle. You knew it was going to be a physical game. Like, that was just one of those where you felt like you got into a boxing ring and went and sparred for 8 rounds, and then you're still feeling it into, Wednesday, Thursday that next week after you played Michigan. And I assume Michigan felt like that after they played Notre Dame. Like, I don't know
100%,
that
100%.
Ohio State or other teams feel that way right now. Like, I think they miss that physical style of football in trying to adapt and go to what now is working in college football with more of like a spread style. They've gotten out of kind of the pro style scheme, but it still works. I mean, say what you want, but like Notre Dame still runs a lot of elements of that. Wisconsin runs elements of that. It still works. I mean, even though Alabama runs from the spread, there's still a lot of elements of the power and gap running schemes that you see are very effective. So I wish they would have stayed the course with what they were doing and their bread and butter personally.
I got to take a 30-second pause. I got to take a 30-second pause. We got a couple more minutes left with Brady Quinn. We can't thank you enough for your time, Brady. Couple more minutes, 30-second pause. We'll be right back. Ermanni and Edwards. This is Woodward Sports Network. Back with Brady Quinn here.
That was a lot to digest.
Excellent analysis. And look, it's a big year for Jim Harbaugh. I mean, 0-5. I mean, I was looking today. I mean, some of these numbers are disgusting. 0-5 versus Ohio State, 2-10 versus top 10 teams. He has never beaten a top 10 team on the road. Never beaten a top 10 team on the road. That's not what you thought you were getting if you were a Michigan fan.
I kind of touched on in regards to like J.J. McCarthy being the highest, recruited quarterback that they've signed into the Harbaugh era is the fact that if I was coming out and it was back in 2015 when he took over, I would have went to Michigan probably. I mean, given his track record, working with Andrew Luck, how he ended up building up, and making it work for both Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco, it's hard to not say, dude, this guy played. This guy was successful. This guy as a coach and player, why would you not? Why would you not want to go play for Michigan? And the odd thing is since that point, it's like they haven't really been able to get that guy in there. And I don't know why. I really don't. And then I think the more troubling part is even the guys they've had, you haven't seen the development. And I think you could maybe make that case for a number of players where, like I said this to Braylon yesterday, we were talking, Donovan Peoples-Jones, you kept hearing all about him and all this ability, all this hype. And it wasn't hype, it's real, because we saw it last year in Cleveland. When OBJ went down, DPJ stepped up in a big way, and now I'm looking at him as like a legitimate threat on a roster of like stud receivers in Cleveland now. And you're going, where was that at Michigan?
Exactly.
So I think there's a number of players that I think fit into that category, like Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye will end up being probably a better pro for the Colts than he was for Michigan, and he was a good player, but it was almost like they didn't really find a way to really utilize him to the best of his ability. Like, I remember watching film thinking, my God, there's no one who's got to jump off the football like that guy in college football. He should be easily a double-digit sack guy. He should be a guy that we're talking about, like the Bosa brothers or Chase Young,
definitely,
like we were seeing at Ohio State. You weren't hearing that. So the lack of development too is an issue for me, only because, again, I would have thought that was like his bread and butter with his coaching style, his practice style, and it just hasn't necessarily been the case because they got talent. They get guys drafted all the time from Michigan right now.
Speaking of Kwity Paye, shout out to my brother Berkeley Edwards, because before Kwity Paye got drafted, Berkeley trained him for a year and a half in the garage. So I appreciate you bringing up Kwity Paye. Hey, making things a little lighter right now. If I was a novice and I want to watch some college football this Saturday, you got a bunch of games. I'm looking at some ranked games. I see Wisconsin and Penn State. I see Indiana and Iowa. It looks like they got a little lazy with the rankings because they just put the Big 10. Hey, we'll just put you guys 18, 19, and 20. But you got Bama 14. I was like, all right, we'll give you guys 17, 18, 19. That sounds about right. And then you see Georgia, Clemson. Obviously, that's going to be a barn burner. Tell us a game that you think will be a good game, a good watch, and give us a quick insight why.
Man, I mean, the two biggest that I'm most curious to see are Alabama, Miami, and then Georgia, Clemson. And it's in part because I'm really curious about all 4 of those teams. Like Alabama is starting Bryce Young, who, I mean, now take this with a grain of salt, okay? The kid hasn't started a game, and I think he's going to win the Heisman. And I'll go even that much further and state.
So great.
I'm going to go that much further and
I
say
agree.
Right now, no. This is going to sound like an overstatement. I swear to you. I think he might win 2. Like, it's that good. And they're that good. You know, Alabama has 9 of the last 11 years has had the number 1 recruiting class. Like, I heard you talking about all the quarterbacks who've been recruited that are starters. Out of that 2017 class, there's like 7 or 8 starters in the NFL right now. Between the quarterbacks, running backs, skill players, all that. I mean, they have recruited and developed as good as anyone. And so they're set up to continue to, even with coaching changes and a change at quarterback, dominate. And this Bryce Young kid, he comes from modern day. And that's a high school that's had the JT Daniels of the world, or a Matt Leinart or Matt Barkley, guys who have been high draft picks, successful at quarterback. And their head coach said he's the best that he's ever had.
Oh, wow.
So watching this kid on film, watching how he plays, he reminds me, to be honest with you, Braylon, of Russell Wilson.
Wow.
Like, that's who he
That's
reminds
high
me of.
praise.
And so, no, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think we missed the boat on Russell, only seeing him 1 year in the Big 10 at Wisconsin. But if you saw him back at NC State, you're like, this kid's an absolute killer. So I think Bryce Young's going to be that. And I think this is like this coming out party versus a Miami team that, you know, De'Ara King's coming back off of an ACL. I'll be curious to see what he looks like. It was a quick turnaround from when the injury occurred. They've got a lot of speed, a lot of ability on offense. They took a big step last year. I just don't think they're going to be able to compete in that one. So curious kind of to see how both teams are, and if Miami can keep it close. And then Georgia, Clemson, because this is the year for Georgia. Like, if not now, then when? For Kirby Smart and all that. And like JT Daniels, who took over, you know, he added more than 100 yards per game passing last year when he took over. They averaged like a little more than a touchdown, I think, when he took over too. Like, he added this deep down the field throwing game that they never had under Jake Fromm and some of the previous quarterbacks, or Stetson Bennett, who was there for a little bit last year. We've always known they play good defense and can run the football. Now they've got a different element to it. So curious to see how that plays out. Then curious to see how DJ Uiagalelei, the quarterback for Clemson, who played a little bit last year, how he then falls in the footsteps of Trevor Lawrence. But more importantly, like, what their backfield looks like. Like, Travis Etienne was probably the most underappreciated college athlete the past 5 years. He led the ACC. He's the all-time leading rusher in the ACC. And, like, he kind of moved on, and, like, everyone just focused on Trevor Lawrence. But, like, this kid was an animal.
Yeah.
And Quincy Roche told me, he goes, when we played Clemson, we were more worried about Travis Etienne than we were the quarterback. So that gives you any indication of how teams prepared for him. But that's going to be interesting to see, because you got 2 great defensive minds in Smart and Venables taking each other on. And then, obviously, you know, what ends up happening with Georgia, and if they can actually beat Alabama and be, you know, the head of the SEC, which I still have to, you know, see it to believe it at this point.
Brady, you've got me jacked for college football.
Ready.
I'm ready,
Put me
man.
in, coach.
I'm so ready to go right now. I can't even tell you. You're doing a phenomenal job, by the way. Thanks for coming on. I got one thing for you. Are you as put off as other people are of the Fighting Irish nickname and their leprechaun, or are you on the Charlie Weiss? And right here, this panel is with the Charlie Weisses as well. Is the Fighting Irish leprechaun, should he be canceled?
I mean, who's offended? Show me what leprechaun out there is offended by this. Like,
Yeah.
It's like if they're a mascot where the unicorns. Like, are unicorns offensive now somehow? Like, no, they don't exist. Like, I have no idea why the leprechaun would be offensive to anyone. Look, I'm Irish, okay? Our family of Oak Quinn is what it used to be. We hail from Dublin. I'm from Dublin, Ohio. I played for the Shamrocks. I went to Notre Dame, and I love the
amazing.
fact that they're the Fighting Irish. Like,
Yeah.
who's offended by this? Like, whoever wrote that article, I think it was someone with, like, the Indianapolis Star, should be fired. I never call people out to be fired. That article deserves to be fired for including them. A myth, a legend, if you will, is offensive. Like, it blows my mind at this point in time why that's any part of it. And I'll say this about the leprechaun at Notre Dame: those people, they work hard, they take it with pride. It's been a very diverse position. Yeah, the push-ups, all that, but the spirit And so I'm completely taken back by the fact that someone could actually think that would be offensive. It goes to show you where we're at this point in time in 2021. It's absurd that everything's offensive at this point.
I love you, Brady Quinn.
Everything's offensive.
You got to say one thing for us after you said all that. You got to say, man, chill out for me after you said all that.
Man, chill out.
There we go. There we go. There we go.
By the way, I'm wearing my blue for you today.
I appreciate that. You know what?
Blue. I'll say it, man.
Stand-up guy right there.
Hey,
man.
we can put him in the club of we are offended that you are offended.
I tell you, I'm not offended because they make great cereal. So I have no problem with
I love Lucky Charms.
Thank you. Exactly.
They're magically delicious.
All you're looking for is the actual marshmallows. That's all you're looking for.
This is true. That's the goal.
The leprechaun's treasure. Yeah.
You know how much oats we throw away in Lucky Charms? We just eat the marshmallows.
Brady, we cannot tell you how much we appreciate your time,
great,
man. This has been absolutely fantastic. I used to hate you at Notre Dame because I was a Michigan guy. I absolutely love you now.
Really appreciate
I love you, Brady Quinn. I love you. Go Irish. I'll even say it for you, man.
Hey, don't go that far. Don't go that. I will say that on the phone, but not on air. Not on air.
Well, quickly, so I took a trip to Notre Dame just as a student in high school, and
they didn't recruit you?
No, they did not recruit me. But as a high school, the admissions people told me kindly, don't waste $50 on the application. So I went to Michigan instead.
That's not a good ploy for Michigan, but Brady, man, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's a great conversation, great insight, man. I'll be sure to call you after, man. I'll get off the air.
Anytime. I've actually got to run in the studio right now. But I'll say, anytime you guys need me, I'd love to come on. Thank you for having me. And hopefully the season goes good for Michigan. Like I said, football is better when Michigan's a part of that national conversation. So I'll say it right now: go blue. Trust me.
There we go. I
know.
Go Irish. I'll say go Irish then too.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks,
great
Brady.
stuff. Brady
All right,
Quinn. Hey, check out his Third and Goal Foundation as well, 3andg.com. It really does
Doing
great
amazing
work.
stuff with the veterans.
Absolutely, improving the lives of veterans. So we want to get that in there as well. 3andg.com. That's the website, Third and Goal. Brady Quinn, absolutely awesome. Let's wrap up some of the things that he said, and we'll get to Man Chill Out as well. Lots to get to on a busy Tuesday afternoon. You are listening to Ermanni and Edwards on Woodward Sports Network.
Tony is a third-generation logger that has a simple, practical approach to life and work. That's why his Coast DX342 knife is perfect for him. The stainless steel blade is rust-resistant and made for all-weather use. And the double roll-lock safety ensures that it will never inadvertently close when he doesn't want it to. That's why Coast is trusted tough.